Here we are. It's a Thursday edition of the Bullpen with Adam the Bull. It is December the 8th, 2022, and on the docket today, we talk about the Browns' battle with the Bengals. Can they do it again against Joe Burrow? And Baker Mayfield. Speaking of doing it again, he's doing it again with the I was going to call them the St. Louis Rams. The L.A. Rams have gone from Super Bowl champs to one of the worst teams in football to Baker Mayfield maybe starting for them in Thursday Night Football tonight. We'll get to that and more in today's Bullpen with Adam the Bull.
Podcast is not for the faint of heart.
And I do think it's time for the Browns to move on.
It's not for those who ride the fence.
He's proven nothing.
But if you're looking for someone who tells it like it is about Cleveland sports,
everybody does fandom their way.
You've come to the right place.
I don't think he's any good.
It's time for the Bullpen with Adam the Bull.
Well, Sunday is the day where the Cleveland Browns go to Cincinnati to play Joe Burrow and the Bengals. Deshaun Watson making his second start, and obviously everybody hoping that he will look a lot better than he did in his first start. Do the Browns have a magical hex over the Bengals? They've won 5 in a row. Kevin Stefanski is 5-0 against the Bengals. He's 4-0 against Joe Burrow. Will that continue? Well, I got to tell you, it might, certainly. I'm not going to lie. I am picking the Bengals to win this game. And you could say I'm being a homer. Maybe so. The spread started at 4.5. It's gone up to 6. There's probably a lot of people betting on this game that don't realize that the Browns have played very well against the Bengals this year. Not this year. They have this year and the last few years. I think what's interesting about this is, to me, and this, if the Browns win this game in Cincinnati, the way Deshaun Watson played last week, the way the defense has played for most of the season, to me, it would be the most impressive win in the Kevin Stefanski era to this point. He's obviously had some regular season, because, playoff win's a playoff win. Now, you did beat the Steelers in 2020 in his first season to get to the playoffs, which is the most important win, but it wasn't an impressive win. The Steelers had already clinched. They had been falling apart, and they were playing backups. They did have a great win over Tennessee late that season. That was a Titans team that was probably the best Titans team. Obviously, the Titans have been a team that's consistently made the playoffs the last few years, and even though they were the number 1 seed last year, I think they were a better team in 2020. And so the Browns won, I think it was high scoring, if I remember, it was like 42-35. Browns had a big lead in that one. The Titans made it close late, but the Browns held on. So that was a big win. Obviously, their first win against the Bengals in Cincinnati last year was a nice win. But here's why this one would be the most meaningful, or at least the most impressive, I should say. First of all, when the Browns beat the Bengals the first time last year, the Bengals they weren't this team that went to the Super Bowl just yet. They hadn't reached that level, right? Again, it was a very impressive win, but they hadn't reached that level of play. Titans, good win. The win over the Bengals earlier this year, very good win. But Jamar Chase wasn't playing in that game, and DJ Reader wasn't playing in that game. And that's not an excuse. The Browns earned the win, and the Browns had plenty of injuries too. I don't say it as an excuse. I just say it as to build up my case for this being, and it was at home. I don't make any of those things as an excuse. The Bengals were the better team. They should have won the game, and the Browns kicked their ass. It's not an excuse. It's just some points to illustrate why I think if the Browns win this Sunday, it would be the most impressive win. First of all, it's late in the season. The Bengals are absolutely cooking with gas. If you look at statistically, obviously Joe Burrow got off to a bad start. The Bengals got off to a bad start. They started 0-2. Since then, they've gone 8-2. One of their 2 losses to the Browns in Cleveland. And in those 10 games since starting 0-2, Joe Burrow's been the best quarterback in football. You look many different statistics. He's been the best quarterback in football. You look at the trenches. This is where the Browns have had a big advantage. There's been a couple of reasons why the Browns have had success. The Browns have had the big advantages in the trenches. However, the Browns' offensive line is playing the worst we've seen it play in a couple of years, and the Bengals' defensive line is playing at an extremely high level and is completely healthy. The other way, the Bengals' offensive line, which has gotten beat up by the Browns in the past, is playing its best football in a couple of years, and the Browns' defensive line, as we know, outside of Myles Garrett, who has been phenomenal against the Bengals, obviously he's a great player overall, but phenomenal against the Bengals. He doesn't have much help there. One of the things the Bengals, another reason, the Browns have had all kinds of communication issues defensively, and when they've had to kind of figure things out on the fly, it's been a problem, and hasn't been an issue against the Bengals. It's going to be interesting to see if the Bengals switch it up at all. They're not a team that does a lot of pre-snap motion. All right, my son is now talking in the background while I'm doing the podcast. I have no idea why he's talking, even though he knows he needs to be quiet on set. Right, Aaron? Yeah, sorry. Okay, that's fine. Okay, have fun. All right. Okay, that's it. All right. So anyway, so you look for advantages for the Browns in this game. Obviously, the Bengals have a quarterback playing at a much higher level than the Browns do. We saw Deshaun Watson come off the worst game of his career. I think we all expect him to trend upward, but it's hard to believe he's going to go from what we saw last Sunday to playing like an elite quarterback as he has in the past in 1 week. Doesn't mean it can't happen. It just means, as of today, there's really no reason to bet on that. Would I bet on him being better? Of course. He can't be worse. He got a full game under his belt for the first time in 2 years. I do expect him to be better, but I don't expect to see the best Deshaun Watson in his second week back after 2 years. I think we'll see moments of it. I think we'll see more moments of it as the season goes along, and I think by next season we'll see a top 5 quarterback again, at the very least a top 10 quarterback in Deshaun Watson again, but I don't think we're going to see the consistency of that this season. So the Bengals having better quarterback play. We talked about the trenches. This has been an advantage for the Browns. I think that's flipped. At worst, at best for the Browns, it's even. But I would argue the Bengals have advantage in the trenches both ways, which has never been the case when these teams have matched up. Plus the Bengals at home. Plus they're playing their best football since that, really since week 3, but especially since they lost that game to the Browns 5 weeks ago, or whatever it was. So there's a lot of things pointing to Cincinnati winning this game. The only real argument for the Browns is that they've had the Bengals number. How legit is that? Well, you've won 5 in a row. It's pretty legit. How is it over, when you look at the Browns being the better team? Well, in 3 of the 5 games, 2 of the games in 2020, the Browns were the better team. They went to the playoffs that year. The Bengals were a bad team in 2020. They had Burrow, but he was a rookie. And then last year in the second game when the Browns won, the Bengals weren't playing any of their starters. So you could argue that in 3 of these 5 games, the Browns should have won. But clearly there's been 2 that everybody expected the Bengals to win. The game in Cincinnati, the first matchup last year, and the game in Cleveland, the first matchup this year. No doubt. Now, I've seen a few people, my buddy Jonathan Peterlin, my buddy Darryl Ryder, talking about, hey, Joe Burrow's numbers have been pretty good against Cleveland. That's not why they've lost. That's to me, if you've watched the games, it's not totally accurate because Joe Burrow has put up some of those numbers in garbage time because the Browns have smoked them. And so, yes, as much as Joe Burrow has accomplished in the 3rd year of his career, he has a lot to prove against the Browns. It's amazing. And they have, but the key thing, if you look at the 2 most impressive Browns win over the Bengals, the first matchup last year, the first matchup this year. What has happened in both of those games? The Bengals drove the ball in their first drive, especially last year, had it in the red zone, but had good drives going, both first drives, and then both times they turned it over. And no matter how confident you are, we saw Bengals who are very confident against Kansas City. They're 3-0. Mahomes against Burrow, the Bengals are 3-0 in that situation. The Bengals play with a lot of confidence most of the time. But when you play a team that you've lost to, and the Browns are really the only team that has had Joe Burrow's number, certainly the only team that he's played against more than once that has had his number, you never know. As confident a guy as he is, if he turns it over, He's going to, there's a good chance he starts thinking about the mistakes he's made and the problems they've had against the Browns, and that's what you got to hope for. The Browns forced some turnovers last week. They need to do it again this week. If there's no turnovers in this game, I'll be stunned if the Browns win. Stunned. The Browns have to win the turnover margin to win this game. It's pretty simple, and that's what's happened when they've played the Bengals in the past. The Browns have brought out the worst in the Bengals the last 2 years. It's very impressive. Kevin Stefanski has won the matchup handily with Zach Taylor. Handily. And that's with having clearly a subpar quarterback. Now, this year they don't. Deshaun Watson is in the same class with Joe Burrow, in my opinion, but he's not at the moment. But he will be eventually. He's the most talented quarterback that Kevin Stefanski has gone against the Bengals with, and yet he's still 5-0 and 4-0 against Burrow. So, as much as everything points to the Bengals winning this game, I still think it's a toss-up. I think, I'm leaning towards picking the Bengals, but I think it's going to be a close game. And the reality is they haven't been. The Browns have won big. I'm excited about this game. It's going to be interesting to see what the Browns do defensively. It's very hard to play man defense against the Bengals. We know the Browns have struggled at times, but they do like to play zone. Is there supposedly Jamar Chase trash-talking Greg Newsome? I don't really think he was trash-talking. I think it was kind of taken out of context, but he was complimenting Denzel Ward, but it doesn't matter what the intent was. If the Browns take it as trash-talking as an insult, you never know what's going to motivate with Chase playing in this game. He didn't play the last time. That's good for the Bengals, but also could motivate the Browns. So, can't wait to get it on Sunday, 1 o'clock. Game is on CBS. Should be decent weather in Cincinnati. Should be a rabid crowd. I'm sure there'll be a lot of Browns fans down there. So it's just going to be wild. Can't wait for it. Folks, we got to pause for a second. We got to try this. Listen, you got to try this. I'm talking about Built Bar's new reimagined flavors. How about cookie dough topper, coconut brownie bar, coconut brownie topper, white chocolate peppermint granola? It's Built's take on the granola bar, so it's more filling and still insanely tasty. And the candy cane brownie puff. Built Puffs are like biting into the universe's most delicious cloud. I mean, have you tried a cloud before? I haven't, but I'm telling you, if a cloud tasted like anything, it's a Built Bar. You're going to love it. 100% real chocolate, 17 grams of protein, shockingly low sugar and calories, just 130. You are going to love it. Go to Built.com. That's BUILT.com. Use the code LOCKEDON15, LOCKEDON15, and get 15% off your order with Built Bar. Okay. Tonight, Thursday Night Football, the Los Angeles Rams, who got to be the worst defending Super Bowl champ ever, are 3-9. They're at home, and they're a 6.5-point dog to a Raiders team that's actually, playing well after a terrible start. They started the season 2-7, had that brutal loss to the Colts and Jeff Saturday, and now they've gone 3-0 since. Their running back, Josh Jacobs, is having a magnificent season. He has over 1,300 yards in 12 games. He has 10 touchdowns. He's been a good back in his career, but he's having a magnificent season. Good timing for him because he's a free agent at the end of the year. The Raiders, as I mentioned, are a 6.5-point favorite tonight. The question is, who will be the starting quarterback for the Los Angeles Rams? There was a report early this morning, from Tom Pelissero of NFL Network, that Baker Mayfield, who was just claimed off waivers on Tuesday by the Rams, might not only be active this week, he may start for the Rams in this game, which would just be wild. We have no clue at this point for sure who is going to be the starter. We know it's not Matthew Stafford, who is injured and will miss the rest of the season. In recent weeks, they've had John Wolford, veteran free agent. They've had Bryce Perkins, who was an unrestricted free agent draft pick by the Rams, I think a year or two ago. And could it be Baker Mayfield this week? Wolford started last week. He's dealing with an injury. Perkins didn't do much when he got his opportunity. Could they give Baker a chance? I mean, Baker might play, I guess. It seems crazy to me that you'd start a quarterback who was having the worst season of any quarterback in the league and has only been there will have been there about 48 hours. But that's how desperate and bad things are for the Rams right now. Their best wide receiver, Cooper Kupp, is, I believe, done for the year. He's certainly not playing in this game. Their running game has been absolutely awful. Cam Akers, I know I had high hopes for him coming off an injury, coming into the season. He's been a disaster. They probably don't have a wide receiver, outside of Allen Robinson, that you can name right now. But it's it's not like he's doing much. So they've got very little. Their offensive line's bad. Their defense has been horrible. Aaron Donald's banged up. I don't know if he's going to play. So it's it's going to be bizarre if Baker Mayfield plays. The way the Raiders are playing right now, and just the mess that is the Rams, I can't believe I'm going to pick the Raiders to win by a touchdown after they started 2-7 on the road. But they're playing well right now, and the Rams outside of Houston and Carolina, maybe the Rams are as bad as almost any team in football. I mean, this team won the Super Bowl. I know they've had some injuries. Age has caught up with them. But at the moment, the Rams are tied with the Broncos, another team that you wouldn't expect to be this bad because Russell Wilson was acquired there. They are tied for the third worst record in the NFL. I said Carolina. Carolina's got a better record than the Rams. You got the Texans at 1-10-1, and then the Bears at 3-10, and then the Rams and Broncos at 3-9. It is stunning, but it is what it is. At this point, it's not a surprise. And so I will pick the Raiders to win this game by a touchdown or more, no matter who plays. Obviously, we don't know if it's going to be Baker, it's going to be Wolford. We're 12 hours before the game, and there's three guys that might start for the Rams. I have no idea. Maybe all three will play. Or at least two. We shall see. But yeah, I'm gonna go with the Chiefs in this one. I mean, it's an awful game. Just an absolutely hideous game. So there you go. All right, take one more break. When we come back, the Guardians have made a big move. We talked about it yesterday with Josh Bell. Winter meetings have ended. I'll kind of give you some thoughts on the winter meetings and what I'd like to see the Guardians do. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Coming up next in the bullpen with Adam the Bull. That's my son. What's up, buddy? We're still recording now. No. All right. What? No. All right, just hang out. Okay. Let's get to the baseball. So the winter meetings got busy in the last couple of days. Guardians did lose a couple of guys in the Rule 5 draft. Not going to spend any time on that. If you missed it late last night, obviously yesterday was a big day. 2 days ago, we had Josh Bell signing with the Guardians, and then yesterday, a lot of big deals came down. Obviously, Aaron Judge, 9 years, $360 million. Xander Bogaerts late last night with the Padres, 11 years, $280 million. I understand that it's frustrating as a Guardians fan to see all these, these other teams sign these big contracts. And that these guys are just, it's not even an option. The Guardians don't play in this playground. And, listen, I understand that the Guardians can't spend like the Yankees and Red Sox. Now, we all know they can spend a lot more than they're spending now. Their payroll should be over $100 million. There's no excuse for it not to be, and hopefully they'll get it there. The good news is that money doesn't buy everything. It buys a lot of things, but baseball's a tricky sport. For as much money as the Yankees have spent, they've won one World Series in the last 22 years. Now, you may say, well, we don't have any, but if you look at the money the Guardians have spent and the success they've had versus the Yankees since 2001, I mean, the Guardians have gotten a lot more for their money. Now, in the end, if they don't win a World Series, it's meaningless. You've had a lot of fun seasons, but you got to punch that final ticket. They've had some opportunities, obviously, especially in 2016. But now with this latest group, because the 2016 team is gone. They're all gone except for Jose Ramirez, right? It's a totally new team. Jose's here. They've got him locked in, and they've got all these young players. They've added Josh Bell on what hopefully will be a one-year contract. I say hopefully because he has an option for an opt-out going into the second year. I say hopefully because if he opts out, that means he had a great season, and that's beneficial to the Guardians, and then they can make a similar deal next year. They've got to be smart with their money because the owner won't let them spend that much, and generally they have done it. I think Bell, as I said yesterday, it's a good acquisition. Not my favorite choice at first base, but it's a good, solid acquisition and a huge upgrade over Owen Miller. Now is the time to strike on catcher. We saw Wilson Contreras sign a big deal to go to St. Louis. I know nobody feels sympathy for me, but that hurt my heart a little bit as a guy who played for the Cubs his whole career. I don't get worked up that guys leave. I like Chris Bryant a lot. He went to Colorado. It didn't bother me. I like Javi Baez a lot. He went to Detroit. It didn't bother me. But when Rizzo goes to the Yankees and when Contreras goes to the Cardinals, teams that I hate, that hurts my heart a little bit, but it is what it is. But now one of the two big catching moves. Now I thought Sean Murphy was going to go first, and that was going to lead to the market opening up for Wilson Contreras. It's gone the opposite. Now the Cardinals off the board. Who's in the market for Sean Murphy? He's a catcher who's a great defensive player, good hitter, under team control for 3 years and won't make a ton of money. I think there's going to be a lot of teams in the mix, including some big market teams. But the good news is that in terms of trading for Sean Murphy, the Guardians don't have to worry about big market teams in terms of, because this is not about who's going to spend the most money. It's about who's willing to give up the most quality prospects. And when it comes to quality prospects, the Guardians are on par and in most cases ahead of pretty much every team in baseball. They have one of the best farm systems out there, and I would expect the Guardians to be aggressive in trying to trade for Sean Murphy. That is, to me, or listen, I've talked about Alejandro Kirk of Toronto also. I think he's less likely to be traded because they're a contender. The reason they might trade him or one of their other guys is because they have three, good catchers to different levels, but three good catchers. And so I think he could be had, and he'd have 5 years of team control. You'd have to give up even more. He's a really excellent player. But Sean Murphy, the A's are looking to move on. They're a terrible team. They want to take advantage of him now. They're going to get a prospect haul for him. So it makes sense for them to trade him. He's going to be traded, whereas Kirk is not definitely going to be traded. Murphy will be. The Guardians reportedly have been aggressive. They're going to have to give up a haul of prospects. But you know what? They have a ton of prospects. A lot have panned out. The Guardians are good at finding these guys. They're good at developing these guys. Now's the time to strike with their prospect depth and go get a guy like Sean Murphy. Because if you go from Owen Miller to Josh Bell at first, and you go from Austin Hedges to Sean Murphy at catcher, when you already have a good, solid rotation, an excellent bullpen. Now, bullpens can vary from year to year, so you never know. But your lineup is significantly better. I talked about this with Miles Straw. Miles Straw is not a good hitter. He is a subpar hitter. However, unlike Austin Hedges, he's not the worst hitter in baseball, and he's fantastic in the field, and he's fantastic on the bases. But I can only live with Miles Straw being, a negative offensively if he's my only negative offensively. And if you add Sean Murphy, and you've already added Josh Bell, then at least against righties, you have only one subpar hitter in Miles Straw. Against lefties, a different story because you need a platoon partner for Josh Naylor. He can't hit lefties at all. He can't beat a lineup against lefties, so they do need to add, to me, I mentioned this yesterday, but I'll reiterate, a veteran hitter who mashes righties, hopefully can play good defensive first because Naylor can't and Josh Bell can't. So I wouldn't mind having that guy as a lefty masher / defensive replacement at first base. They need that too. Those are the next two pieces, but the catcher is the key. The catcher gives you 8 legitimate hitters against righties and 7 legitimate hitters against lefties. They got to get there. I think they will. I'm feeling good about it. I don't know for sure they're going to get Murphy, but I do feel like at the very least they'll upgrade a catcher. If it ends up being Christian Vasquez, well, he's not as good as Sean Murphy, but he's certainly better than Austin Hedges. All right, folks. Thanks for joining me on this Thursday edition of The Bullpen. Make sure you subscribe to the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show on YouTube and hit the alert bell. You'll get alerts whenever I put out a podcast, whenever we put out a podcast from the show, whenever we do a post-game show or a bonus breaking news show, you'll get that alert. Consider becoming a member of the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show for just $4.99 per month. You'll get bonus content and a whole lot more. Also, check out my website, adamthebull.com. Cameo on Adam the Bull, and, of course, on Twitter at Adam the Bull. And check out the Locked On Browns podcast with my guys G. Bush and Jeff Lloyd. Subscribe to their podcast as well, most weekdays. So there you go. I'll talk to you tomorrow for the big Friday show. Where else but right here in the bullpen with Adam the Bull. See ya.